What's been happening is an appraiser will come and will appraise the house way below value when the African American spouse happens to be home. But if they switch that around or in the same house, what they'll do is they'll basically take any sort of proof down that there's a black family living there and replace it with like family pictures of the white person's family. And regularly, the value of that home is 40% greater than when it's as though it's an African American.
If you want to experience white privilege, go to Kenya. Like, colonization and slavery has almost affected black people the same way. The amount of privilege that I get being around you everywhere in the world, even in countries where it's like majority black.
There's a thing going around on TikTok of like, have you ever been pulled over for no reason, with like the white partner and the black couple? And, we've seen that. If you ever had people cross the street because, when you were walking down the street to like avoid you, all of these things, So in some ways, like this is something that we're all aware of. And if we're not aware of it, either we're not focusing on it or we haven't actually seen how it directly impacts us. So therefore, it's like it doesn't exist. It's kind of like you when you first got here, or our friend Francis, who took him like 20 years to recognize racism because he just couldn't see it because he didn't know what to look for and he hadn't grown up with it. And he grew up and he's Nigerian, right? Mm-hmm. So you have kind of that, but I think one of the things that I wanted to kind of dig into a little bit is how do we support each other? Because it could be very easy, I think, as the white partner to get a little bit defensive. Like, it's not me doing that. I'm working my butt off both within my relationship and in the world to make a difference. I'm trying to understand, though I can't fully understand. Like I'm doing my best, right? But that actually doesn't matter. I could be the perfect person and it wouldn't actually reduce or eliminate, would reduce for sure, but it wouldn't eliminate the fact that this reality in the world we live in is going to come into our lives and into our relationships simply because we live in a racist world.
Yeah. And I think it's really important for me, even when I'm going through that, to remind myself that it's not about you and I, it's actually about a system that's created. And so if we can't separate those two, like it just becomes like, I also have I'm like, wait, am I blaming my partner for what's happening? But then I also have to just remind myself, I trust you to know, when I'm talking about whiteness and white supremacy, I'm not talking about you.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Or racism or whatever. I get it. And at the same time, and I think that's one of the things that we've had to bring into our relationship is really depersonalizing the situation. And I think we can do that when we kind of look systemically, but it can also be difficult because so last week there were 3 days where you really could not interact.
No, I just, something happened last week where it's just the reality of living the last 2 years in Kenya and then coming into America with the unrest that is here was just so much to handle. Do I want to stay here? And then I'm just wait, there isn't really a safe. Colonization and slavery has almost affected black people the same way, differently, but the outcome,
there's similarities of the white superiority complex around the world.
Yeah, and so I'm thinking is Kenya even that good? I lived in Kenya with you, and it was, if you want to experience white privilege, go to Kenya. It's for me
overt white privilege. Because here the covert white privilege is shocking, but you don't necessarily notice it.
Yeah, and being with you last year in Kenya was just wow. Even in a black country, we are trained to view whiteness as, I don't know, a mate. It shocked me. Just the amount of privilege that I get being around you everywhere in the world, even in countries where it's majority black. Yep. And then I come here and it's the same thing. And so I was 3 days of like asking myself, like, where is that place that I can disappear to? Like, where is that space where it can be fully a human Black woman without experiencing this privilege that I experienced around being with you? And it was just like in my bed, like there was nowhere. Like, that's kind of like, I just kind of wanted to like almost not think about it.
Well, and then I think what comes back then is the respect that we have to understand that's underlying in our relationship, so that like when you are kind of having these kind of understandable timeouts in your life, that I don't personalize it, because it could be very simple. Like, you don't want to talk. You want to just sit there and watch Netflix all day.
Yeah.
Right. And in that case, it could be like, and withdrawn, like you withdrew.
I literally withdrew from life. Like,
Right.
I was just like, I am watching Netflix, drinking wine, and eating cheese. And like, those were the 3 things I committed to for 3 days. I was just like, no conversation, no intellectual, no phones. Like, I was just like, I'm just watching movies. And I also was like, I'm also gonna choose movies that are kind of cute, like out of this world. And I started like, also like the books that I chose, I was like, no more Color of Money. Like, I'm just gonna read like this spiritual book about like another world. It's kind of crazy, but I did check out. And I also checked out out of our relationship, like with you. I was just like, I need a break.
Right. And then for me, like, when you look back, I mean, for me, that was like handling that has been also a process and a journey that really began long before we got together, not taking things personally, this kind of stuff. But then it just really kind of became this thing for me to say, I don't know if I'm going to do this right. At one point, like, you had breakfast, like late breakfast, and then didn't come out of the room, and I brought you some food. Just like, here's some food, and you were ravenous.
I'm so hungry.
And it was like, it was in this place where I had to say, I'm going to be supportive, even if you were, whatever was going on with you, I knew it wasn't about me. And even if it seemed that way, because at some point, like towards the end of it, I was kind of doing some stuff, and I just said, hey, I'm crossing stuff off my list. I just need to put this on. This is something you actually really need to take care of before the end of the weekend. And you don't have to do it now. That was on a Saturday morning or something. It was still 2 days. And you snapped at me about it, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of got you into a negative mood. And, you're like, I just need space. Like, why can't you give it to me? And then at that moment, it could have easily been where I could have gotten defensive, right? To be like, why are you treating me this way? I'm bringing you food. I'm giving you space. I'm doing all these things. And what is it? Still not good enough? Or all this stuff that I could have gone to, but ultimately what it came down for me and what I needed to work on and deal with was, none of this is personal. None of it is, about me. We are a team, and I can, and in this moment, it's just incumbent upon me to not take anything personally,
Yeah,
because otherwise I could have perpetuated that. And then it could have become about us.
Yeah, and it was not about us.
White.
Oh, white, yeah. And I was just like, guys, like, I snapped. Like, I was just like, I cannot talk about this. Like, I just need a break from this.
Right. In my life, it's a little bit different because I deal with it regularly because it's part of you, because you're a part of my life. But for really before then, obviously social justice, all kind of, racial justice, social justice, gender justice, these things I've always been very passionate about. But in a lot of ways, very theoretical, And granted, yes, I've got a bunch of daughters, and I've been, and I've been in relationships with women before, and I understand as much as possible, and I've made a great effort, but it all still stays. Like, I just can't understand it quite in the same way. But kind of going back here is that, for people like your American family, as it were, being Caucasian, are like equally as passionate about justice and social justice. but it's still theoretical. They can still go to bed knowing that they for example, they like your host brother who's like doing is studying for the bar exam. He knows that he's got the support. He's got his parents' house to live in where he doesn't have to work for several months in order to study, right? Like that's, and it drives him crazy that he has that privilege knowing that you also have a good friend who's African American who went to the same law school but didn't have that kind of support and had to work and work and work while trying to study, and eventually it just became impossible.
Yeah.
And he also knows, like he even said, the bar was basically designed in part to keep minorities out because you have to have wealth, in order to have the time that it takes to study for the bar. You
Yeah.
can't be working at the same time. You can't have all of these kind of things stacked against you. It's just too much. And so, but still, that's theoretical. Like we want to change it, but at the end of the day, I'm going to bed in a really comfortable house with air conditioning when it's hot outside, and so I feel like that theory versus living with it is just so different.
Yeah, I think that's why it's like for me is like I'm living it, and almost for you're living it with me, so you're experiencing it. But when I do talk to like white friends and like my white family, it's just like I'm starting to be like more careful because I don't want to be involved in the theory all the time, because it's like being in this country, it's like it's becoming my lived in experience. So I don't want to hash my lived in experience, and sometimes I just need a break from it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I went on Twitter and I was like, what are other Black women doing? And they were just like, we drink wine, we cater to our plants. And it's like these small things that is self-care with everything that's happening. Like I feel like if you get so involved, like it can actually drain you so much. So I'm like, how can I get involved and at the same time take care of myself? Because it just almost seems like endless.
Right.
It's George Floyd. It's like all these uncountable people that you just lose kind of track. And I'm just like, is this ever going to end? And sometimes you're like, yeah, you go protest, you do this, you contribute, you donate. And sometimes you're just like, I just want to take a break from it.
Yeah, you're right. It's as though it becomes this, a weight. And I think just kind of like dealing with that in the relationship is really like, I think for me as the Caucasian in this relationship, is to really hold the space and like actually not judge. I don't have the answers. I'm going to be an ally, but I'm also going to make mistakes. I'm willing to not give up when I say something, and we've talked about this before on the podcast. Like I've said things that were offensive or hurtful. And early on, I was like, oh, I would feel really bad about it. Or now I don't want to say something because I might say something stupid. And instead saying, you know what? If I say something stupid, if I say something offensive, that's okay. I will forgive myself, and you can not forgive me or forgive me as you want to. But I have to actually really, I need to sort of let go of the need to be right, to understand, to know what's the best thing to do. I need to let go of all of that stuff in order to really be present there for you. And however you're going to react or go through, I can just hold the space. It's really not about me. All the stuff that's going on is not about me. I have a part to play. I feel like I have a huge part to play, and I will play that part,
Yeah.
But I also like first and foremost is listening and giving the space and being a servant, not necessarily a leader.
Yeah. So for all the interracial couple out there, like I want to know how like the two of you navigate what's happening and what has been happening in this country, in terms of race. Like how do you guys talk about it? Like how do you hold it,
Yeah.
Because I think it's a thing that interracial couples have to navigate, because one person has especially like interracial couples who are like white and Black, is like one person holds the privilege, but then you're equal in the relationship, and like how do you navigate that So
Yeah, it's really, I think it is, it's important just to bring the awareness. And I'm sure we'll have this conversation again and even continue to explore a bit deeper, because it's something that's going to continue to come up. And we all know we have to be allies for each other. You need to create the space for me to be a human before being like a white person. And I need to create the space kind of for the same thing, but at the same time, understanding that we are in this life, in this particular world together
yeah.
as an interracial couple.
So thanks for tuning in today and listening to our podcast.
Once again, as always, make sure to subscribe, follow on social media, on wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, click below, hit the subscribe button. We'd love to have you. And then anytime you have any comments or something you'd like us to bring in, or as Cera mentioned, how you're dealing with this, please make sure to make a comment below, or check out our Facebook page, which is the Interracial Couple. And we look forward to hearing from you and staying in touch.
Yep. Have a fabulous week. Thanks for tuning in.